What if a country song could come to life, not through guitars and lyrics, but through wood, stone, and rolling fields of Tennessee? That's exactly what Alan Jackson's Sweetbriar Farm feels like. A place where every porch beam, every barn door, and every trail through the autumn woods hums with the spirit of his music. It isn't just a farm, it's a sanctuary, a quiet poem spread across acres of land, where tradition meets elegance and where the soul of country music seems to rest. Today, we'll step inside this remarkable property, uncover the story of how a small-town boy from Georgia built a $150 million fortune, and explore the mansions, cars, and lifestyle that shaped his legendary journey. Before the fame, before the platinum records, before Sweetbriar Farm ever existed, there was just a skinny boy in Newnan, Georgia, growing up in a house that wasn't even a proper house. Alan Jackson was born in 1958, the only son among 4 sisters. His childhood home? It was built around his grandfather's old tool shed. Imagine that for a moment. A superstar to be, raised in a space so modest that every corner creaked with history, every wall whispered of survival. Could anyone looking at that boy have guessed he would one day reshape country music? Life in Newnan was simple, even harsh at times. His father, Eugene, known to everyone as Daddy Gene, worked hard with his hands. His mother, Ruth, or Mama Ruth, kept the family rooted in faith and warmth. Music wasn't just background noise, it was a lifeline. Young Alan spent his days surrounded by gospel hymns, the kind that rose from church pews and echoed through the Georgia air. But then, something changed. A friend slipped him records of Gene Watson, John Anderson, and Hank Williams Jr. Suddenly, Alan's world cracked open. Those voices carried the grit of real life, heartbreak, resilience, hope. Could it be that this shy Georgia boy had a voice of his own, waiting to break free? After high school, Alan joined a local band called Dixie Steel. By day, he labored as a construction worker, even drove a forklift. By night, he sang in small Georgia clubs where the air smelled of smoke and spilled beer. The pay was small, the hours long, but in those rooms, Alan learned how music could hold a crowd together. Still, something tugged at him. Was playing bars enough, or did destiny demand more? At 27, he made the decision that would change everything. With Denise, his high school sweetheart and wife, Alan left the comfort of Newnan and headed for Nashville. It was a gamble, wasn't it? A man with no money, no connections, carrying only a handful of songs, and a dream big enough to scare him. In Nashville, he didn't walk into stardom. Instead, he worked in the mailroom at the Nashville Network. Think about that. A man destined for the stage, delivering letters in the shadows of other stars. But fate works in mysterious ways. Denise, working as a flight attendant, crossed paths with Glenn Campbell, a country legend. She dared to mention her husband. Campbell handed her a business card, the kind that could change a life. And it did. Soon after, Alan signed with Arista Records. By 1989, when Arista launched its Nashville branch, Alan Jackson became the very first artist on their roster. And just like that, the quiet boy from Georgia had stepped into the spotlight. His debut single, Blue-Blooded Woman, came out that same year. It didn't make much noise on the charts, but the next album, Here in the Real World, was different. With heartfelt hits like Wanted and I'd Love You All Over Again, Alan connected with fans across America. It was raw, honest country music, the kind that felt like coming home. From there, the climb seemed unstoppable. Don't Rock the Jukebox in 1991 went multi-platinum. A Lot About Livin' and a Little About Love in 1992 cemented his place among legends. By the mid-90s, Alan Jackson wasn't just another singer. He was carrying the banner for traditional country in a world that was drifting toward pop. And then came September 11, 2001. Out of the heartbreak of that day, Alan wrote Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning? Performed live with no frills, just his voice and truth, the song touched millions. It won him his first Grammy and forever tied his music to America's collective memory. Decades of #1 hits followed. He sold millions of records, toured the world, and stood shoulder to shoulder with icons like George Strait and Randy Travis. But beneath the lights, Alan remained that boy from Newnan, humble, grounded, and forever tied to his roots. And it was those roots that guided him to Sweetbriar Farm. Because for Alan Jackson, Success was never about skyscrapers or flashy penthouses. It was about finding a place where music, family, and tradition could live together. Which brings us to the question, what does a $150 million fortune buy a country legend who still believes in simplicity? The answer waits behind the gates of Sweetbriar Farm. Sweetbriar Farm, over 130 acres of untouched Tennessee land. Forests, open fields, rolling hills, all bound together by silence and space. This is Sweetbriar Farm, Alan Jackson's retreat from the world. But is it just land, or is it something much greater? The property is designed for independence. A nearly 1-mile private driveway winds through the trees, leading you to a gated entrance that ensures absolute privacy. Once inside, you realize this isn't just a farmhouse. It's a carefully reimagined sanctuary, blending rustic charm with cutting-edge technology. Sweetbriar is entirely off the grid, powered by an advanced solar energy system that not only runs the estate, but even sells excess power back to the local utility. Add to that a geothermal HVAC system and a wide-reaching water filtration network, and you begin to wonder, how often does a country star's home double as a model for sustainability? Step into the heart of the home, and you'll find a luxurious kitchen fitted with top-of-the-line appliances. It's where elegance meets function, a space designed not only for preparing meals, but for creating memories. Beyond, each bedroom feels like its own private retreat, complete with remote-controlled skylights and automated blinds. At the touch of a button, light pours in or shadows descend, tailoring the atmosphere to the moment. Isn't that the perfect marriage of country simplicity and modern comfort? And yet, Sweetbriar is more than its interiors. Step outside, and the farm continues to surprise. There's an exquisitely designed outdoor cooking area, ideal for hosting friends beneath the Tennessee sky, all framed by a stone-paved entrance that feels like something out of a storybook. From there, sweeping views stretch over wooded ridges and open valleys, offering multiple landscape building sites with panoramic vistas. Can you imagine creating a permanent homestead or even a private family compound here? Every detail feels intentional. The land remains wild yet welcoming, the home meticulously renovated to balance off-grid freedom with high-end luxury. Solar panels hum quietly on the roof, filtered water flows clean from every tap, and the geothermal system maintains perfect comfort year-round. It's as if Sweetbriar itself has been crafted to prove that self-sufficiency doesn't mean sacrifice. Valued at around $5 million, this property is not just a house, it's a lifestyle, a vision of balance between nature and technology, tradition and progress. So what does it mean that Alan Jackson, a man who could have lived in glittering penthouses, chose this? Perhaps it tells us that true luxury isn't in noise or excess, but in space, peace, and the freedom to live on your own terms. But of course, Sweetbriar is only one piece of the puzzle. What about the machines of steel and horsepower that carried him through the open highways of America? We turn to his cars, each one not just a vehicle, but a story waiting to be told. Cars. For Alan Jackson, his cars are more than horsepower and wheels. They're snapshots of different chapters in his journey. Dodge Viper RT10. The Dodge Viper is not a car you buy for comfort. It's raw, unapologetic, and built to roar. The RTT10 in Alan's collection reminds us of the 1990s, when his career was burning hot, and he needed something that could match that fire. With its 8.0-liter V10 engine pushing over 400 horsepower, this wasn't a car for quiet Sunday drives. It was a beast, a rebel on the road, much like Alan's refusal to abandon traditional country music when others chased pop fame. Can't you just picture him gripping the wheel, the engine growling like one of his opening riffs, and the open highway stretching endlessly ahead? Ford Thunderbird. If the Viper was raw energy, the Thunderbird was pure class. This car, first introduced in the 1950s, became an icon of American design. Alan's Thunderbird reflects another side of him, the romantic storyteller who understood elegance as much as grit. With its sweeping lines, chrome accents, and a V8 heart beneath the hood, the Thunderbird isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's about the ride itself, the way the wind whispers through the windows, the way style announces itself without a single word. And isn't that exactly what Alan Alan's music does, blending smoothness with authenticity, tradition with timeless cool. Ford Mustang Shelby GT500, then there's the Mustang Shelby GT500, a legend among muscle cars, and perhaps the one that most perfectly matches Alan Jackson's public image. This isn't just a Mustang, it's the Shelby, a car built for speed and dominance with a supercharged V8 engine capable of over 500 horsepower. The GT500 isn't subtle, and it doesn't try to be. It's bold, commanding, and unforgettable, much like Alan stepping on stage in his cowboy hat, commanding arenas filled with tens of thousands. You can almost imagine him, hat tipped low, firing up the Shelby's engine, that thunderous sound echoing through Tennessee backroads. Isn't it remarkable how a car can feel like an extension of someone's voice? Together, these cars tell us something deeper. Alan Jackson could have filled his garage with European supercars or flashy imports, but he chose American icons. Viper, Thunderbird, Mustang, each a symbol of homegrown power, tradition, and pride. Just as his music always stayed rooted in American country, his cars stayed loyal to American muscle. But horsepower alone doesn't build a $150 million empire. So how did Alan Jackson turn songs into a fortune big enough to buy farms, mansions, and machines of steel? The answer lies in the story of his income. A journey from modest paychecks to record-breaking tours. $150 million. That's the number most often tied to Alan Jackson's name today. But how did a boy from a converted tool shed in Georgia stack up a fortune so massive it could buy farms, lake houses, and muscle cars without a second thought? It began with the music. In the 1990s alone, Alan sold millions of records. Albums like Don't Rock the Jukebox and A Lot About Livin' going multi-platinum, each sale adding fuel to the fire of his bank account. Every time a fan slipped one of his CDs into the player, they weren't just singing along, they were helping Alan carve his financial future. Then came the tours, sold-out arenas, summer festivals under the southern stars, ticket sales climbing into the millions. Night after night, Alan stood before tens of thousands, his voice carrying across stadiums, and every seat filled meant another step toward the life he dreamed of. Songwriting royalties added another stream. Alan didn't just perform, he wrote. Every spin of Chasing That Neon Rainbow, or Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning, meant checks arriving long after the applause had faded. Music in his hands became not just art, but an investment that kept paying back. Add in endorsements, appearances, and the timeless demand for his catalog, and it's no wonder the total today sits at $150 million. But here's the question. With all that money, what does a man like Alan Jackson do? Hoard it, spend it, or give some of it away? The answer lies in a quieter story, the story of his philanthropy. Philanthropy. For all the millions Alan Jackson earned, perhaps the most telling part of his story isn't what he kept, but what he gave away. His journey into philanthropy didn't begin with a press release or a photo opportunity. It began quietly, often in moments when the world was hurting. After devastating floods and hurricanes in the South, Alan stepped in, donating both money and benefit performances to help rebuild shattered communities. Wasn't it fitting that the man whose music spoke of home and roots would be the one to protect those very roots for others? He has also poured support into education and hospitals, funding causes close to his heart and close to his home. In small towns across Georgia and Tennessee, his generosity became a lifeline. Families in need, children without access to health care, disaster victims who had lost everything, Alan's hand reached further than most ever knew. One of the most moving chapters came after 9/11, when his song, Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning, became an anthem of healing. The royalties didn't just elevate his career, they also flowed into charities that supported victims' families. Isn't it powerful how a song born of grief could be transformed into a stream of hope? Unlike some celebrities, Alan never shouted about his giving. His philanthropy mirrored his personality, steady, grounded, and sincere. He gave not for applause, but because it was the right thing to do. And maybe that's why fans see more than just a star when they look at Alan Jackson. They see a neighbor, a friend, someone who never forgot the values of generosity and faith, instilled in him back in Newnan, Georgia. But philanthropy is only part of the man. To truly understand him, we have to step away from the stages and the charities and into the quieter corners of his life. So what does Alan Jackson's personal world look like today, as a husband, a father, and even a grandfather? Personal life. Alan has been married to his high school sweetheart Denise since 1979. Their love story hasn't always been smooth. In 1998, they briefly separated, a crack in the foundation that fame and distance can bring. But instead of breaking apart, they rebuilt. Denise later shared their journey in her best-selling book, It's All About Him, a testimony of faith, forgiveness, and resilience. Isn't that the essence of country music itself? Heartbreak, redemption, and love that endures? Together they raised 3 daughters, Maddie, Alexandra, and Danny. Each of them grew up not just under the roof of Sweetbriar Farm, but under the values Alan and Denise carried with them from Georgia: faith, humility, and family first. Now, Alan has stepped into another role: grandfather. In December 2022, Alexandra, affectionately called Allie, welcomed a baby boy, making Alan and Denise first-time grandparents. Can you imagine the quiet pride on his face, holding a grandson in the same arms that once cradled guitars and gold records? Life today is slower for Alan. Mornings on the balcony at Sweetbriar often start with coffee in hand, the Tennessee fields unfolding in front of him. Afternoons might mean strumming a guitar, not for a crowd, but for himself, or perhaps for Denise as they sit side by side. Evenings are family dinners, where laughter fills the kitchen and stories stretch long after the plates are cleared. He still keeps close friendships too. His bond with fellow country legends like George Strait remains strong, a reminder that even icons need companions who understand the weight of fame. And though he has shared stages with the biggest names in music, Alan seems most at home with old friends from Newnan. Proof that no amount of money can replace the comfort of people who knew you before the world did. Travel remains a joy as well. Whether it's quiet getaways to the lake house in Georgia or vacations with his daughters, Alan values memories more than headlines. At this stage of life, it's less about chasing success and more about savoring it. Isn't that the kind of ending we all hope for? To work hard, to give back, and then to rest in the warmth of family? Alan Jackson's personal life today reflects the same simplicity and sincerity that shaped his music. Beneath the cowboy hat and behind the Grammy trophies is a man who still believes in faith, family, and home. So now we ask you, if you could choose one piece of Alan Jackson's world, his cars, his mansions, or this timeless farm, which would it be? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more stories of legendary lives, and join us again as we step inside the homes and hearts of the world's most fascinating icons.